Star Wars 7x7, episode 2286. October is Star Wars Reads Month, and we're going to talk about exactly what that means and some of the benefits that you can get as a result of Star Wars Reads Month, including a Canon novel that is available for download right now, and it's going to lead us to talk about the 10 young adult novels that are currently in the new Star Wars canon. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. So, here's the deal with Star Wars Reads, which actually in the announcement on StarWars.com is not really clear what Star Wars Reads is all about. So yes, there are events potentially that can happen in libraries and bookstores and whatnot, whether in person or virtual, as the case may be, but if you dig a little deeper, you find that the original mission is supposed to be a series of events that harness the appeal of the popular franchise to celebrate literacy and reading. Now, when this started back in 2012, it was just a one-day event with stuff happening all over the place, but now they are celebrating it as a month-long thing, and the official Star Wars press release says that there will be events, promotional discounts, and giveaways throughout the month, one of which is happening right now. So Zoraida Cordova's A Crash of Fate, which is a novel that takes place on Batuu, one of the novels tied to Galaxy's Edge and Black Spire Outpost, that novel is actually available for free as a digital download, so a Kindle or Nook or whatever your free ebook download situation is, and that is going on through October 9th, and one presumes that there are more surprises like this to come. So the fact that A Crash of Fate was brought into this whole thing made me decide to look back at the young adult novels that have been released in the new canon so far. Of course, just a quick refresher, in April of 2014, Lucasfilm rebooted the publishing canon, and so everything that had been published in book and comic form prior to that time was now considered to be legends. It was no longer an expanded universe that built on the canon of the movies and the Clone Wars TV show. So they started out with A New Dawn, which was an adult novel, and which is still an adult novel, but since then they have come out with exactly 10 books for the young adult audience, and they would be Queen's Peril and Queen's Shadow and Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston, Lost Stars and Leia, Princess of Alderaan by Claudia Gray, and 5 additional authors for the other 5 books: Most Wanted by Ray Carson, Rebel Rising by Beth Revis, Force Collector by Kevin Shinick, Dameron Freefall by Alex Segura, and of course A Crash of Fate by Zoraida Cordova. Now, I had a moment where I thought about ranking them from 1 to 10, and then I thought, I don't know if I necessarily want to pit them against each other, and I also thought about the fact that the Star Wars experience is just so personal, right? Like, you're gonna love the stories that you love, you're gonna especially love stories that involve the characters that you love, and yes, it is possible to be critical, to actually critique these books and judge them on their merits, regardless of where you are in your particular flavor of fandom. And at the same time, I've said this on the show, and I think Dan Zare over at Coffee with Kenobi has said something similar, but basically, Star Wars stories are like pizza. You can have a bad one and it's still pretty darn good. So, I'd rather take bad pizza over no pizza most days of the week. And similar story with Star Wars novels. So, rather than do that, I will simply say that as far as, fan reaction and general critiques, it does seem like Lost Stars by Claudia Gray is hands down the overwhelming favorite and the best reviewed of all of the Star Wars young adult novels. So if you haven't checked out that one, I would highly recommend it. And I'll even just drop a quick note to the universe to say, if anyone out there is listening and can greenlight a sequel with Thane Carell and Sienna Rhee, then by all means do. Because that's something that I think a lot of folks who appreciated Lost Stars would very much like to see happen. And speaking of my own personal favorites, if I may give a plug for one of those 10, I have to say I really enjoyed Rebel Rising by Beth Revis. And the particularly interesting thing about that for me is that In the past, I've talked in shows about how, if the novel doesn't necessarily have a bigger story arc, a big idea that it's working through and towards, then that tends to be less enjoyable for me as a reader. And it is like that with Rebel Rising. It's basically a series of adventures that show how Jyn Erso goes from being picked up by Saw Gerrera on Lamu, when we see her in the prologue for Rogue One, to the point where we see her in the Wobani prison later on in Rogue One. And yeah, the novel is basically just how she gets from point A to point B and all the adventures and horrors that she goes through. It was really compelling. It is, not structurally the kind of story that I generally enjoy, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it had a visceral impact on me as I read it. I think Beth Revis did a tremendous job with the storytelling and the character of Jyn Erso and all the supporting cast around Saw Gerrera, and Saw himself, of course. So yeah, definitely a personal favorite for me. As far as A Crash of Fate goes, definitely a good read, definitely worth your time to go download and get your free copy if you haven't read it before, if you don't have it already, so go do that before October 9th. And I also want to share with you something that Zoraida Cordova said in an interview for StarWars.com when they were talking about her book being made available as part of Star Wars Reads, and I will share that with you in just a second. Before I do, I just want to ask you once again, if you have not rated or reviewed Star Wars 7x7 on your favorite podcast app, please make this the day, and I hope I've earned 5 stars from you. If not, that's okay, just be honest. And if the spirit moves you, please take a second or two extra to write a quick sentence or two about the show, about what you love about the show. I would really appreciate it, and it helps more people find Star Wars 7x7 in their podcast searches. So thank you again for considering it, and if you have taken the time to do it already, then thank you so much for doing that. So here is what Zoraida Cordova said about Star Wars storytelling. She says, "There's so many things to love about Star Wars. Scoundrels, Jedi, Ewoks, Porgs is all caps, as it should be. But my favorite aspects have always been the humor, the underlying love stories, and the exploration of outposts on dusty planets that feel like the Wild West in space. If you love those things too, then A Crash of Fate might be right for you." And we've talked previously on the show about how vital romance is to Star Wars storytelling, and how it wasn't as overt as I hoped it would be in the sequel trilogy. I'm a sucker for a good love story, I guess. And we haven't talked about humor in a while in terms of Star Wars storytelling, but that's something that is absolutely crucial to the whole mix as well. So basically, I completely agree with where Zoraida is coming from, and that's the sort of energy that she brought to A Crash of Fate. So once again, check it out. I will post the link in the show notes for this show's episode at sw7x7.com. And I hope you grab it, and I hope you enjoy it. So that's going to do it for today's episode of the show. Thank you so much for joining me for it, as always. And may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2020 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.